Welcome to the Southern Steward Podcast, where we explore stewardship through the lens of our faith and the great outdoors. All right, welcome back to the Southern Steward Podcast. This is Ep.2, and I'm Kyle White, here with my co-host Will Blunt. Will, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Enjoyed trapping bears yesterday, and looking forward to our interviews and devotional tonight.
Yep, we got a good one for y'all. We're going to sit down and talk with Jenna Malzahn and Traci Wood, who are the leading researchers on our local black bear population here in Mobile County, and we're excited about that. I'm really excited because I've got bears on my brain. Just got back from the Georgia mountains a couple weeks ago. Did some scouting for my upcoming bear hunt there, and so I'm all about black bears right now, and I'm excited to get this one going. So
you kill a black bear, you're going to go for the grizzly next, or
no? Man, I got a thing for black bears. You know, black bears. Their scientific name is Ursa americanus. So they're like the mammal of the United States or whatever. And I don't know if you're a Daniel Boone fan or whatever, but Daniel Boone was big on the black bear, and it drove all of like the United States economy back in the 1800s, early 1800s. It was all about bears and bear grease and bear meat and hides and all that. It was a big deal.
I was going to say, I heard recently, now Jenna and Traci may be able to tell me if this is not accurate, but I heard recently back in the day that actually they ate bear meat more than they did deer.
Probably. I think they killed everything off. I don't know. But I think it may have been out of necessity, but maybe not.
Well, I know there weren't many deer around here.
Right.
I know my great-granddad used to talk about that they didn't really see any deer until the 50s or 60s up in that area.
Well, you know, the first push west when they came through Cumberland Gap there in the Appalachians, that was all bear country. You know, those big mountain woods or whatever. There's not a lot of deer, but it's a whole lot easier to chase down a black bear, you would think, than a whitetail.
That's true.
Maybe so. Maybe they
probably easier to bait.
Yeah. Maybe they just like black bears out of necessity.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's going to be a good one, and we're about ready to get it rolling, so let's do it.
All right. Well, welcome, guys. We have Traci Wood and Jenna Malzahn here today. Why don't you guys go ahead and just kind of introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your background and what you've been working in.
Hey, I'm Traci Wood with Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources with the Wildlife and Freshwater Fisheries Division. After that mouthful, I have been working with them for a little over 23 years. So I started when I was 12. And I've kept my age well, right? Doing this kind of work will keep you young. I've been involved in various things such as landowner, technical assistance, managing grants, being involved with writing and implementing the Alabama State Wildlife Action Plan, and working on various research projects that oversee or aid in the recovery of wildlife species at risk.
Okay. Jenna, what about you?
Yeah, I'm Jenna Malzahn. I'm currently a graduate student with Auburn University studying black bears down here in the Mobile County. And my thesis and my project is really focusing on cub survival in this population, and then also looking at den characteristics and selections that our bears are doing.
So if you can't tell, Jenna's not from these parts. Yes. So, where we are, football's very important. The question I always get is she related to Coach Malzahn? So I know everybody's going to wonder that. Are you related to the Coach Malzahn?
Uncle Gus.
Oh,
No. Me and my brother do call him Uncle Gus, though, just for fun. But as far as we know, we're not related.
I was about to say, he's got a really nice place on Lake Martin. You could go hang out if it was your uncle.
Just I'll knock on the door and be like, hey, we have the same last name. We are related somehow, maybe.
Right.
See if you'll let me in.
And Jenna graduated from Michigan first, right?
Yes, go blue.
So not only did you come from University of Michigan, you're now a Auburn student.
Yeah,
grad
Warriorville.
student. Pretty tough on Alabama fans. Right?
Michigan's got a big game this weekend.
Yeah, we do. Got to keep it up.
Longhorns
We were top notch. We got to just keep that going.
Yep.
I remember what it was like to be top notch. I'm a Florida Gator fan. It's sad times for us, but
Oh, well, it can get worse.
Yeah.
I'm from Tennessee.
you've been through it. You've been through the
Yeah,
dumpster fire.
my
Been through
blood
the
is still
dumpster fire.
orange, but I did go to Auburn University, so that's my saving grace for.
Just a different shade of orange.
Yeah, so that's my saving grace for working in Alabama now.
Okay. Hey, I want to touch real quick. You say you started with the state when you were 12.
Yeah,
Explain
that's right.
that a little bit. What do you do? What did you do as a 12-year-old for the state?
Oh, I'm wicked smart. That's the
Okay.
thing. I was a
Okay.
genius.
All right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Worked my way to the top really
Yep.
quick.
Have you been-
Now I get to play with bears sometimes. It's awesome.
Been riding those benefits for quite a while. That's good.
Yeah.
Good pension built up.
Yeah.
Good for you. All right, so Jenna, talk to us a little bit about your research and what you've been doing.
Yeah, so I've been down here for 3 summers now. And yeah, like I said, the focus of like my project is really looking at cub survival. And so in order to do that in the summer, which is breeding season for black bears, and when they're usually the most active, I will set up traps. They're Cambrian style traps. And so they're just like live traps on a trailer. We bait the bears in and hopefully catch them. They're bears though, so they like to make it difficult. And then we'll sedate them and do like a full workup. We'll get weight, we'll take a bunch of measurements. And if it's a female, they get a GPS collar. And this year, actually, one of the really cool things we're doing is we got brand new GPS collars that have a camera in them, so we can record video footage and pictures while they're out and about and get a more passive look and like passive way of monitoring them from a distance. And then what we use those GPS collars for really is to track them to their dens in the spring. And then we'll go into the dens and then we actually collar the cubs with a different type of collar that are designed to grow with them as they get older. And they're designed to last for about 9 months and then they'll eventually fall off. And we use that to track cub mortality and to see how long our cubs survive. And then also, if they were to die, the causes of that. We'll track them. As soon as a collar hits mortality signal, I'll go into the woods and track them wherever they are and figure out if it's a drop collar or if the cub has passed and then figure out what happened. That's kind of the big gist.
Yeah,
What
were you the first graduate student to do the research? Did research start with Jenna? No.
No.
How long has it been going?
No, so we started our black bear research project in partnership with Auburn University over 10 years ago.
10 years ago in Mobile County.
Yes.
Okay.
We were looking at the 2 main populations in the state in the very beginning. We knew very little about the status of black bears in the state, how they were doing, where they were reproducing, where are they moving. So we have a lot of questions that need answering that assist our agency in recommending management tools to private landowners, looking at any hunting or trapping seasons. We have to have that science in place to know that we're making good decisions for the population to do well.
Okay. Will and I had the privilege of going out with Jenna a couple weeks ago to trap and take some data off of one of the females that she caught. And Jenna, I know you've probably done this a time or two, but I want to talk about bear bait first. Talk about your little bait ball there and, what the groceries that go into it.
Yeah, so people have probably seen me at Walmart with my cart full of a number of really sugary things. And I always wonder what people think I'm getting it for because it's very chaotic, but it's mostly a jug filled mostly with corn, but then you have to add the goods on top. So that's like apple pie filling, fruity Dinobite cereal, blueberry or strawberry syrup. We do unicorn cakes are a fan favorite for the bears down here. I don't know why, but they love them. And then Kool-Aid mix. I found, and this may just be anecdotal, but I think blue raspberry lemonade is their favorite flavor. That is
It's
just
true.
a good scent.
You learn what their favorite foods are. You really do.
Yeah,
You'll
you
go to
do.
the grocery store and get, you'll either go to the sweet drinks, the Kool-Aid, Tampico, or you're going to the Little Debbie aisle to get some honey buns.
I'd say
Yes.
like my kids, anything that turns their tongue, like blue raspberry is going to turn their tongue blue, so they love it. So bears are just kids.
They
They're
are.
just big
They're
kids.
so they are so funny and curious and goofy and interesting and laid back. I think we as humans can learn a lot from bears and how they view life.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I think if I saw Jenna coming out of the store, I think she was like binge eating for something.
Yeah, no.
Jenna weighs
Kool-Aid.
100 pounds. It weighs 100 pounds and it's 5 boxes of little dinners out of the store.
That's throw in a can of sardines and you've got lunch for a biologist. So
Yeah.
If you ain't never had sardines on a honey bun, I'm just saying they go pretty good together in a pinch. Anyway, Will brought up a point to me a minute ago. Let's take a step back from that. Jenna, tell us before we get too far into the bears. Let's talk about you just a little bit more. Tell us about what got you here. What got you background story, I guess.
Yeah. So I originally from Michigan, and I grew up in Michigan, and I've always loved wildlife, and I didn't really know exactly where I wanted to be in wildlife. I did internship at wildlife rehab before, and then I worked at a bunch of sanctuaries, and then I kind of got into research before I came here, and I was in Nebraska for 3 years, studying river otters and cranes and bison and things like that. It was really fun. That
In
kinda
Nebraska, you said?
in Nebraska, yeah. It's way more biodiverse than you would expect.
Right. Yeah, I just think cornfields.
No, exactly. So I really found my love of research there, and I knew I wanted to go back for my master's. I wanted to further my education, and this project came up. I found it just on Texas A&M job board.
Oh, that's cool.
I know when I applied, and I got it, and that's really what brought me here. And I've been here for about 3 years now, and I've loved it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I really have to brag on Jenna coming from a totally foreign state on the opposite side of the country, and just she has smoothed her way in here. She doesn't weigh 80 pounds soaking wet, but she can handle any size bear. She does a lot of this work by herself, and she is doing a fantastic job of working with the landowners in the area and carrying out the job itself.
Well, this will be the third time I've told Jenna, but I'll say it now that everybody's listening, that everybody you talk to around Saraland that knows or has met Jenna talks nothing but good about her. And I told her she's really affected our community, and we was glad to have you as a resident, although it may be temporary. But hopefully not. Maybe you get to stick around a little longer. But also, I got to go one morning with Jenna to release a boar bear or a male bear, and we climbed on top of the trap. And she's like, "Yeah, most of the time I do this by myself." And I'm intimidated. I'm 6'6", 250 pounds. I'm pretty intimidated because this thing's just popping his teeth and huffing and puffing. And we climb on top of the cage and reach down and pull the lever. And, of course, he runs off because that's what they do. But Jenna had no fear, and she knows what she's doing and handled herself well. Traci, is this a job that the state has pushed on you? Was it available, and who wants to take it? Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, well, the bear is a species of concern in Alabama. So that means that we need to pay some special attention to that animal, learn more about it, learn more about what's causing its demise, and follow through with any recommendations for land management or protection for that animal. So it being a species of concern in the state, it was of a high priority for us to fund within our agency. And like I mentioned, that started over a decade ago, and we've been fully committed to this research, finding answers to those questions so we can make the best management decisions for the black bear, especially in this South Alabama population where it's operating and functioning very different than our other main population in the Northeast.
And just kind of briefly before we move on with that, tell us a little bit about the grants and species of greatest conservation need and where the money for the research comes from.
That funding source is through our agency, Wildlife and Freshwater Fisheries. It's through the State Wildlife Grants Program. which is a federal grant program through the Fish and Wildlife Service.
Okay.
So in partnership with Fish and Wildlife Service, and then in this case for this project with Auburn University, it's given us the capability to fund this research project
And
for as long as we
a lot
have.
more projects also.
Yes,
right?
other projects for species of concern.
Right.
One high-profile project that we have is reintroduction of the eastern indigo snake into Conecuh National Forest. We also fund the Alabama Aquatic Biodiversity Center in Marion, Alabama, which grows mussels and snails that don't exist anywhere else on the planet, and raise them there for purposes of reintroducing them back into our state waters.
Will's got some of that mussel experience. Wasn't it mussels?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
Neuropicto.
Mussels and mussels.
Yeah.
No, Will had to relocate some for, I don't know, you have to explain that.
Yeah,
you'll do a
it
better job
was
than me.
actually for my job.
Oh, yeah.
In Andalusia.
Oh, the Gantt drawdown?
Yep.
Yep.
In Point A.
Do that every year.
Yeah. Well, every time we pull the lake down, I'm not sure when we're scheduled to do it again. But yeah, we had a whole big ordeal over there.
Yeah. Our
I-
mussel folks with mussels go
Yeah.
to
I know
that
there's a
every
bunch of
year
folks, yeah.
and involved with that. Sure.
It was
Yeah.
it was fun for the first couple days.
Yeah.
Like you get to
Right,
just walk
yeah.
around the lake bed and like pick up mussels and stuff
Yeah.
and explore. And then like by day 3, you're just like, okay, I'm kind of over this, like
Yes.
you're not finding as many. And then it's like you're going through some muddy places up to your hip in mud. And
Yeah.
it's just like,
it's
man,
tough work.
It is.
Stepping up and out of that mud like that with boots on is a
Well, there were some
workout.
lost shoes.
Yeah.
that
Oh,
week.
yeah.
Yeah.
So as far as the outlook for funding and research, we our benchmark for this particular project that we're working with Jenna with getting her master's degree is a 5-year term for a project. So we're a year into that grant phase. So
great.
this portion of the project has, as long as Congress continues to fund that program, we have dedicated future funding to continuing the work for at least 4 more years.
Cool. And Jenna's supposed to graduate in December, or graduating in December, right?
Yes.
Not
that
supposed
is
to.
the plan.
Right.
She doesn't know this, but she's not leaving.
They're not yeah. They're purposely not filling.
Yeah.
They're purposely not sending you a student behind you.
I don't know what's happening with that.
Right. All right. So let's talk about research now. So you mentioned that the main topic of your research was cub mortality and den characteristics. Let's talk about cub mortality. And what kind of rate are you seeing with cub mortality?
Yeah, so we haven't run any like full-on models yet, but from 2019 to 2023, because this year it's not conclusive because we trap cub survival until the first fall. We're not there yet. We had 35 total cubs, and out of those 35 cubs, we had 24 passed. So yeah, we had 24 out of the 35 did not make it to the
Wow.
first fall.
That is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. So, and what is the cause?
It's a variety of things, and it's the problem with the collars. Unfortunately, is like they're designed to grow with the cub, but you're also on black bear cubs, and especially if they have multiples in a litter, they're wrestling all the time. They have really sharp claws, so it's hard to get the collars to stay on for very long, and so a lot of times they drop their collars. Unfortunately, before we're able to confirm why they passed, we can just verify that they have passed based on monitoring the sow and seeing like, oh, she started with 3 cubs, now she's down to 2, or she had 2 and now she has 0, and she's now getting like rebred by males. You can know then she has lost her whole litter. But for some of them, we had a litter completely wiped out by coyotes in the past. We had some drown. We've had some with human-related causes. I had one last year that got hit by a car, unfortunately. So yeah, it is a variety of things. And yeah, we're kind of looking in, when we do start running the models, there's a lot of different things we're going to be looking at to see like what potentially may increase a cub's like chance of passing, which would be like weight, because we visit them when they're 2 months old. Maybe they're starting out smaller than they should. age of the mother and like if this is her first litter versus her seventh litter. That was kind of insane amount of litters there. That was just the first number on the top of my head.
Nobody else knows that. So.
But it is important to stress that these females are getting bred back to back.
Yeah.
They're having cubs and litters every year. And I can imagine how
It's
taxing
hard,
that is on her. We don't know what the milk
Right.
nutrition might be like.
Yeah, it's Tracy. You were talking earlier. It could be a number of things,
Yeah.
from genetics to because we have such a localized population, and there's not a huge range, and there's not a huge diversity in their genetics. So I mean, just all kind of stuff. And talk about the stress and the weight that mama carries around being bred year after year after year. And the one we studied, she was eat up with ticks, and it was hot, and just, man,
30 pounds underweight.
right, just awful.
Yeah, there was a difference
Just a
between when I first
awful-
caught her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Momming ain't easy for a mama bear down
Right.
here
No.
at all. And Jenna mentioned several things, just factors of being in the delta with the swamp and the water fluctuations, and being a small cub and facing that challenge right out of the den.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that's easy at all. It's hard for me to walk around in the swamp and
Right.
over fallen trees and whatnot. But we do have the question of, are our cubs smaller when they're born than compared to the rest of the black bear range? We think they may be born later in the season than any other black bears in the range. So there's factors like that that we're also looking at and trying to find those answers, just not like anecdotal field observations. We're trying to
Right.
get solid scientific data,
Sure.
especially with mounting the cameras on these
Right.
collars. Is that a factor? Because I guess in seeing this for over a decade, my gut kind of tells me that these cubs start off in a very vulnerable state with being born later, possibly smaller.
What's
Milk
the issue with the
nutrient is
born
in
later?
question, so they face life very hard in the beginning down here.
What's the dangers if they're born later?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, to start, like, even compared to, like, our population of black bears up north, so when we collar the cubs, you have to go in. Cubs have to be 3 pounds and able to put a collar on them. Because if they're less than that, the collar can be potentially, like, detrimental to their movement, and you don't want to add a potential
It's carrying capacity, basically.
Yes.
With,
Yeah, you don't
It's
want-
like the collar has to meet 10% or so of
Yeah.
a certain weight.
Yes.
That kind of logic.
Yeah, so for cubs, they have to be 3 pounds. So for the northern eastern population of black bears in Alabama, you go in mid-March, which is pretty much the same for like everywhere else in the country for black bears. You go mid-March because they're still small enough where they're not mobile and active, and they're still in the den, but they're big enough where you can collar them. We can't go down and collar cubs down here until beginning of April. So we have like a 2 to 3 week difference because our cubs are not 3 pounds yet. And sometimes I will go in the beginning of April and they're still not 3 pounds. And then I have to go back and revisit the den again and hope that they have gained the necessary amount of weight in like the week or week and a half and that they're going to be 3 pounds at that point. So that is kind of the big difference, and that's why we have all these questions of like, are cubs being born later? Are they being born smaller? Are they just not growing as fast as everywhere else? And that's why I'm super excited for these new collars with the camera because it'll give us an inside look into the den that we can't get just on ourselves. Because we have tried to like put up a camera at the den. It's just, our bears are special. And we're super far down south. They don't need to den up unless they're giving birth, because it's not cold. It's not very cold. They still have food available. There's still water available. So that's why we still have bear activity down here in the south in the winter, because they don't need to like go and like do a true torpor. And so it's hard for us to get in close because the bears are pretty much awake the entire time, and they don't stay once we get up there to put a camera, unfortunately. So this is our like win to win. So I'm super, super excited for them.
Yeah, it's going to give us some exact dates that we haven't been able to pinpoint before. And I think that's going to be very important in kind of solving these cub questions and the cub mystery. Why are they dying? But there's a lot of factors that go into just kind of being against the population down here with genetics and closely related bears that are breeding multiple times, no new genetic influence. So urban sprawl is another factor with development and pushing bears out, getting more friendly with seeing human faces, unfortunately, and having to adapt to new environments, sadly. But this is why we want to know the answers to these questions, and also taking into consideration what they're facing and how we can bring those two worlds together in a hopefully healthy way.
Yeah, because we also can get, I wanted to mention this because I'm super, like another reason why I'm excited for these collars. I love them. So I'll keep talking about them. We have some females that like, I've known that, like I have one particular I'm thinking of right now. She should have had cubs 2 years ago. And every year she hasn't had cubs. And I'm wondering if maybe she's having cubs and just losing them early on. We have no idea. So it's also giving us an idea of her, because we're not going to visit bears until like 2 months in, because you don't want to go early and risk them potentially abandoning their cubs. You don't want to go when the cubs are too small.
We're super selective about our approach to any disturbance with the project, because it is, like Jenna mentioned, they're fully awake during the winter, so they're fully aware. And if we disturb them any way, they take note of that and they will move. And we can't just keep constantly following them around with a live cell camera and wanting to attach it to a tree and watch them.
Yeah, Jenna said she last year had to do everything she could to get, I guess it was last year, maybe it wasn't last year, had to get the mama to run so you could check the cubs out.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes
they move.
Sometimes they really like to hold on. I mean, especially if they have cubs, that's when they're going to be the most secure in their spot generally. They're going to want to stay there. But yeah, no, like earlier this year, we did try to go in like mid-January. I'm sorry. Why am I saying June? Mid-January, we tried to put cameras at the dens because we're like, they shouldn't have cubs yet. It's early. We went. It was a cold front. So we're like, oh, perfect. Maybe they won't move as much. Both the sows we tried left. And they did not come back to those spots. And they did both end up having cubs, but they just moved dens because they had no site fidelity at that point, because there's nothing holding them to that spot. So that is one of the...
I want to get into your collars, but I want to take a step back and just talk about like kind of general bear anatomy, maybe. So you can correct me at any point when I'm wrong. Our bears in general have a pretty long, we'll call it heat. Female bears, I guess, a breeding cycle, or does it come and go throughout the summer?
Yeah, it comes and go. So they come into estrus. I don't actually know how often they come into estrus, but they come into estrus multiple times in the summer. And what happens is they need stimulation to ovulate, so they have to be bred to ovulate, and they only ovulate one egg at a time. And then what happens for black bears is like the egg and sperm meet up and it kind of hangs out in a free-for-all because they have delayed implementation. So the egg, it hangs out for a couple months.
It hangs out for like 3 months.
Yeah.
Yes. And it doesn't actually implant. They don't actually become pregnant until like November, like December.
But usually with northern bears, that would be triggered by torpor, right? When gestation starts?
Photo period of the day.
Okay, so it's the same down here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then during the summer, they can be bred by different bears throughout the summer, I guess I'll say.
Yeah, they can. They could have, you could have a litter of 3 and they could each have a different father. But black bears do have like mate choice. So like she will generally pick who she wants to.
Is it usually the dominant?
Yeah, there's usually a dominant male, and then there is usually another male that has worked his way in and kind of is just on the outskirts,
he looks scraggly,
grabbing any lady he can in the moment. So you usually get to at least 2 males in the mix of breeding rights.
All right. And then how long is the gestation period?
60 days.
60 days.
It's short.
It's quick. But they do most of their growing outside of their mama.
Yes.
When black bear cubs are born, they are a pound, correct?
Yes.
Thereabouts.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's 12 to 16 ounces.
That's nuts to me. When you told me that the
Super
other day, I
tiny.
was
Yeah.
so surprised by
Yeah,
that.
they're
Yeah.
super, super tiny.
You'd think they'd be like 10 or 12 pounds a piece or something.
Right, or just big enough to
Like-
defend themselves.
Yeah,
at least.
they kind of go against the rules that mammals have in general when it comes to that. You know, it's kind of like proportion to size
Yeah.
with a young and their mother, but not the case with bears. You know, you can think of polar bears being the same way. They have those just little hairless. They almost look like rats. You know, they're
I
not
guess
very
I'm just
cute.
ignorant to that. I'm not even aware.
I'm going to go look that up now.
Yeah.
They're not really cute. Their eyes are closed, but they grow really, really fast. I
Right.
don't
Yeah.
remember what.
Well, yeah, you got to
the
get them before they're
radius,
3
but-
pounds.
Yeah.
And, how long does it take them? The 3 pound mark is just because by 3 pounds they're rowdy, right? Is that what you're saying? Trying to get to them before 3 pounds? Because
yeah, it's more age than
Yeah.
weight.
okay.
Once they get about 8 to 10 weeks, they're pretty feral at that point.
Yeah.
And they're screaming and letting you know they don't
Right.
like what's
Yeah.
going on. But before that, they're like Play-Doh. You
Right.
can
Yeah.
just do whatever with them.
Yeah, we have to go because we have to go so late because of the 3 pound rule. Like we get them where they're a little bit chaotic. Like I have someone trying to climb a tree and I'm like, nope, come
Yeah,
here. Like
5 pounds is a good mark, I think, for calling
Yeah.
a cub and getting in a den. But then they're wanting to use you like a tree at that point.
yeah, they're wanting
too.
to like run.
Yeah.
It really depends on what mom does. If mom runs,
Yeah.
they're like bye.
Yeah.
As well.
So hopefully with this Cub season, however you want to call it, you're going to have some more insight to that time frame due to your collars, right? So tell us, you're replacing regular GPS tracking collars with these collars that have got a camera built in. But tell us about the remote. It's not remote triggered, but it's got some timer or something on it. Explain to us the camera there.
Yeah, so all of our adult collars do have, it is technically a remote trigger. So I could trigger this like from my laptop and be
Okay.
like, if I want it to fall off at any point, it looks too tight or something like that, I could be like, fall off, please. So just press a button, which is nice. So all of our collars do have that, and they all have pre-scheduled release dates. For these collars, they're scheduled to drop after a year. Exactly, like there's a magnet on, you take the magnet off, and then from that time it'll drop off. Because that's mostly due to storage with the camera. So the camera has 40 hours of storage available on it. And so we don't want to override that. And so that it kind of just only lasts a year. Our regular collars can last 2 to 3 years depending on battery life. We usually try to keep it to 2 years though.
All right. What about the timer on the camera deal? It's not set to start even.
Yeah, no, it's set to start during denning season because that is our biggest question is trying to figure out what's happening in the den. So it's set to start January. It's going to run from January 15th to April 15th and take 30-second videos every 15 minutes from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then from April 16th onward, it's going to take pictures every hour on the hour.
That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool technology put to use there. That ought to go a long way with, showing you your window, when to get there and all that stuff. But also it ought to reveal quite a bit about the second point of your study is denning characteristics.
Yes.
So what
I
is
got one more question. About
Okay,
the camera.
go ahead
Yeah.
with it.
So, is the camera and your setup here is this being used elsewhere in bear research, or are you kind of the pioneer, I guess, to the camera?
No, so for this company, because we're using low tech for these collars, they have used been on bears before. Polar bears and grizzly bears, I know of for a fact, and they've also been on elk. So other research groups are using them already. I'm really excited for us to deploy them on our bears, though, too, to get because we just have so many questions.
Right.
So I'm really excited to see.
Yeah, those cameras, no doubt, is going to be key to us solving
it's a cool
some
thing. Yeah.
questions on this project. It's going to confirm
Yeah.
maybe some
Right.
ideas that we've had or not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a cool
that's what
thing.
research is about. It's,
Yep.
it's pretty cool stuff.
All right. So what does a bear den look like in Mobile County?
Yeah, because that is different than what everyone else is probably going to think, unless you talk to me, because I definitely talk about this all the time. So down here, we mostly use ground nests. So when I tell people that, I'm like, think of a turkey nest, but bear-sized. Like that's all it is. It's just like a shallow depression in the ground. Sometimes like in pine needles and there's some brush around, but that's usually what all they use down here. I will say it's in usually very, very thick locations. Like there's thick vegetation everywhere. There's briars. Like it's not easy to get to. Like it's really hard to stumble across a bear den. I have to crawl sometimes to get to them, just because it's so thick. But that's usually what they use down here. We've had one case of one being in a stump before, and then this year I did have my first 2 that were in brush piles, which was really exciting for me. But yeah, when you normally think of a black bear den, you think of like a cave or an excavation in the ground, and that's not something we usually see down here. Or like even in a tree, we don't see that down here either. Whereas the northeastern population, you have everything you'll typically see. We have different types of habitat, so there's a big difference there. But yeah, they'll have caves up north, excavations, lots of brush piles. They even do ground nests up there too. But
Well, just our neighbors to the west of us, Mississippi, with similar habitat, in their swamps, they have tree cavity bears that den that way, and we don't have any of that down here. Everything we've documented so far, there's been no tree dens at all. I don't think we really have the mature trees for it.
Right.
But, it's just like Jenna mentioned, these shallow depressions, and even though they're in these thickets, gnarly thickets, very well hidden. But it just seems like there would be something better for them to use. They still seem so exposed, especially when you think about a cub just being born. It is completely exposed to the elements.
Yeah.
And we've tinkered with putting artificial dens out before. Before Jenna came on with another graduate student, but we saw evidence of bears kind of checking it out, but not using it as a source for denning opportunity. I don't know if it's just kind of that's what's ingrained in them over time, and they don't know any different. But they seem to pick the worst spots, really, to have their babies.
oh no, yeah, you can you run the gamut of like a good spot and a terrible spot. But yeah, no, like Traci was saying, it's very much open to the elements. Like their mom, the sow, is their only source of protection from predators, from the elements, from pretty much everything. Especially because they're born so small. Yeah, it's very interesting the choices they're making.
And it's completely different in North Alabama.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that we're painting a picture of more down here and listeners for this area, but North Alabama population is very different. They will use caves and rock
Just
outcrops
outcroppings,
yes, very, very remote, difficult places to get to,
Right.
and they do use that. And brush piles they use very often too. You can walk right past a brush pile with a sow with cubs in it, and you'd never know it.
That's
no,
it.
you wouldn't.
I know that
Jenna-
because I've done it.
Yeah, Jenna showed me a video. It was where a den was, and unless you had the collar telling you that there was a bear there, you'd never know.
Yeah.
Never
No
know.
idea.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's
Yeah.
they're such large animals too, and you don't know they're there. They're so quiet.
So what we're calling brush piles is more like logging debris, tree tops falling down. You get it, maybe some root balls with blowdowns and stuff.
Get some big bucks laying in those too.
Yeah, well, probably not in the same bed.
Well, not the same one. Same type stuff.
And then you talk about your ground nest or bed or whatever. That kind of, you'll see when I walk through the woods, you see depression. You can see where the grass is laid flat, where something's laid there. Most times it's deer, I think, mostly, but I guess it could be bear too, just out in the wide open. Just not very smart, seems like.
Yeah,
But
a young mom, first time mom.
Yeah.
You could
I know
see where that would happen.
I know where I was going. Sorry. You talked about the Delta bears in Mississippi and Arkansas, and even Louisiana has some bears in the Delta region. Maybe not Louisiana's Delta region, but in the swamps anyway. How come we don't find bears in our Delta? What's the difference?
Yeah, I think flooding has a big reason for it. There's not available habitat all year round, and then also there's not available food all year round too, and that's a big part of it. Like bears need dry land and food for the whole year, and so it isn't really able to sustain them all year
Yeah,
long.
I guess maybe that Mississippi Delta is a little more, I don't want to say reliable, but maybe that's the word I'm looking for. It doesn't.
Stays dry longer.
Yeah, it stays
There's
dry.
some
It's
nice
not as finicky.
cornfields.
It's not as finicky as our Delta that could go underwater tomorrow if it rained
Right.
good tonight.
Yeah.
So
It presents itself very
Right.
differently.
well, there's
It
that
really
there's
does.
that pretty popular video floating around. I guess it's probably Mississippi Department of Wildlife or whatever. They got the thing looking for the bear, and they look up and it's just a broke off tree, a huge tree, and they climb up there and look over, and sure enough, there's a collared bear asleep
Yeah.
Yep.
in the tree trunk. So
That's-
we won't see anything like that down here.
Not in a tree.
But
No.
there's hope because there's an anomaly. Jenna found an excavation first in 3 years.
Yeah, that's the first excavation I think we've ever found down
Ever,
here.
yeah.
It wasn't active, but the sow who I'm pretty sure made it was 10 meters off in a brush pile, so I think she may have moved. But
Did
yeah,
all
it was.
the work.
Yeah, she did all that work and then she left. I don't know why, but to be fair, she was a first time mom, which also kind of threw me. I was like, wow, what are you doing? Like, you're throwing out all the wild cards, excavation, brush pile, like not anything I expected. But so that may be why she moved. But it was really exciting. I crawled in it to take all the pictures. Like, you could see the bear claw marks on the side, so you knew it was her. So yeah, it was really, really cool.
And what we mean by excavation is a dugout den in the side of a hill, basically. Kind of
Yep.
like a gopher tortoise burrow, but bear sized.
Yep, yeah, it was down in a valley, on the
Yeah.
edge of the valley.
So weird that that bear wasn't raised that way. What example? How do they even think to do it?
It could have just been a mistake. Who knows?
Maybe.
Yeah.
We've seen it this one time that Jenna found it and documented it. And then, like she says, the picture, it is obvious of what that bear was trying to do. And then the
Right.
fact that she was so close to that site as well. So I don't know. Bears, they're like toddlers. They will make fools
Yeah.
out of you. They keep us guessing quite a bit. Once we think we know them,
That bear was just playing
they
in the
change.
dirt. Just playing in the dirt.
Probably was.
It's like, turned around and it dug a big hole and was like, oh, wait.
Probably
I probably need to get out of here.
found the one gummy bear within 40 miles, and she got it under
Oh
that
my
root
God.
wire.
She might have been it might have been the wrong side, and like the sun directly sets in, and she
Yeah.
gets blinded every morning. She's like, I gotta move. I have no idea. Yeah, it was really interesting.
That is interesting. All right, Tracy, tell us a little bit about your procedure and when you're entering den sites and handling cubs and all that.
Yeah, people really like to hear how we handle that. Unfortunately, I think that many folks dramatize bears from what they've seen on TVs and the movies, and especially with grizzly bears. And black bears are very, very different. They're very lazy. They don't really want to be around people. They like food, so if you got food, you're in good shape with them, or bad shape maybe. But people are often surprised with how we actually do this kind of work and approach the dens. But again, we have been trained to do this. I think all wildlife should be treated the same, and they should be left alone. You shouldn't take the chance of ever approaching wildlife. Their wildlife should be left alone, and
Don't pick up
for
the
your
fawns.
protection as well, for people's protection as well, from being injured or disease-related issues. So it's a public safety concern as well. But how we enter the dens is very unscientific, really, you could say. It is based on experience and just knowing bear behavior, basic bear behavior. So we know where she's at because we've had this GPS collar on her. So we know where she's settled down and had cubs. If we're lucky, sometimes we do get a live cell camera on and we can tell how many she might have in a litter. But if you're working in North Alabama and they're in a rock outcrop, that's kind of thing's not possible. You're going in a little blind. You know who she is. You kind of know her personality. You know her weight. And so you can kind of guess where the escape route's going to be for a bear. So in these situations, you're either in a thicket or in a cave. Unfortunately, it doesn't present a lot of opportunities for sedating the sow like a lot of other states do. They approach their dens very differently than we do here in Alabama. So we will sedate if it's safe for everyone, the bear and the folks doing the work. But most of the time we're not able to sedate the sow. So we basically have to shoo her out. Like I said, it's very scientific. You clap your hands, you make a lot of noise. You just shoo her out of there. And the theme Mama Bear is kind of cute because these mama bears are usually not aggressive at all. One time out of 12 years of me doing this, I've had one sow that just didn't absolutely want to leave her cubs. And you just have to walk away and respect that situation.
Yeah.
But we work very quickly in taking the cubs, weighing them. They get a pit tag inserted, which is just like you would do with your pet. If you gave them some kind of ID system, you can scan them, a name pops up, and it associates with that particular animal. And at that time, we would collar the cubs as well, work them up as quick as possible, least stress possible, put them back in their den where they came from. Usually we are working together with that so someone can keep an eye on Mom. But she usually stays at a comfortable distance from us. Sometimes we can hear her making noises, sometimes we can't. We just get in and out of there quick. We usually have a cell camera up on that den, and typically an average return time is somewhere around 45 minutes to an hour. The mom comes back.
Yeah, no, like black bears are conflict avoidant, so they're generally not going to stay and put up a fight. It's only when they're feeling like backed in a corner and defensive when they're usually you're gonna have problems with them. So yeah, and another thing with like our bears in particular, like they're not in as deep of torpor as they'd get in other populations. Like they're awake. They hear us coming. They're awake the entire time. So they usually don't even have to clap. Mom just runs when we get too close generally. And like that potentially is a way to try to draw us to follow her instead of go to the cubs. But it's either that move or she stays for a while trying to get the cubs to suckle and keep them calm and keep them quiet. But then she eventually leaves and we go in and do everything as Traci was saying. And he gets a quick workup. But Mom's around the entire time. Like the big part of workup is I talking the entire time. I don't know what I'm saying. Sometimes I sing, like just things come out of my mouth just to make sure the mom knows we're still there.
Yeah.
Like that's the big thing.
You just like, hey, Mom, I'm still here. Yeah.
Your big job is just to keep the cubs nice and calm and quiet. Because if they start to cry, that's when you that's when you have potential like mama bear issues. Kind of like that's when she's going to be a little bit more on edge. But generally, I haven't had any really problems with bears. I've had some sit a little bit closer than I was necessarily comfortable with. But we work as quickly and efficiently as possible, get everything we need, lead the cubs, and then drop the cubs in. And we book it out of there. That's the big thing is like no matter what happens, I'm like, we got it. Like, let's go. Like cubs will start crying. People are like, oh, but they're, and I'm like, nope. This is good. We want them to cry because you want Mom to come back faster. Yeah. And like the quickest I've had a sow come back was 10 minutes. I was like, oh, she's already here. Like we just got
back to the truck.
I know. I'm like, oh, you're here. Cool. I'm like, great.
And it's good to see that because I think anybody's natural thought with that would be like, oh, well, it's like some people think touching a fawn. You touch a fawn or a baby bird and Mama smells the human, they're not going to come back. And that's not the case. It's not the situation with all wildlife, of course.
It's not encouragement to touch them, though.
Absolutely.
No,
All wildlife is different, and you should be a trained professional, properly permitted to be able to do these things because, with social media, we see this a lot now. People just walking up to a tree that sees cubs and just takes them out of the tree. And those kind of things it's sad. That's the bears. Unfortunately, humans is one of the worst enemies when it comes to bear and them becoming habituated through food sources.
I've encountered quite a few bears in the woods in my line of work in Mobile and Washington County, and most of it is me trying to keep up with them, not them coming to see me. When I've had them walk under my tree stand while I'm hunting, and the second they know I'm there, they're gone. So I've never seen any aggressive behavior. Not that I'm a bear study research person, but I've never seen any aggressive behavior from black bears. Or in Georgia, when I'm up there, encountered last year 2 cubs in a tree, and I got up under the tree trying to get closer to them. They were in a white oak, and didn't know the mama was already on the ground. I was looking for her in the tree, and she's already on the ground. And she kind of huffed and popped her jaw, and then when they heard that, they were faster than
said,
firemen
"Yes,
down
ma'am."
the
Yep.
pole, and they were gone. But
Yes,
that was
ma'am,
just
Mom, I'm
that was just
coming.
her calling them. She wasn't talking to me, I don't think.
Yeah.
But anyway, they're they get mixed in with that 1 or 2 incidents of grizzlies, but they're just conflict avoidant was a good word.
Yeah. The time when you have problems with black bears is when they get habituated to people.
Yeah.
And that's when, like, they know there's a food source nearby
Yeah.
and they get more used to people. Because then you're taking away that, like, scaredness level. It's
Right.
not really a word, but you know what I'm
Just
saying. Like,
they're more comfortable, being there,
Yes.
right?
and that's when you can have issues.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, let's-
bears are highly food motivated. They want food and they want an easy source of food.
Hyperphagia, the right word? Is that,
Yeah,
is
no,
that
that's
it this
starting
time of
right
year?
now. Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes, when
hyperphagia.
they're tanking up. Yeah, they will.
Is
go
that true
through
for our
that.
bears too? They,
Yeah, it
they
is.
do the hyperphagia thing? Okay.
They still do it. I mean, they don't necessarily have to do it as much because there's still going to be food available all year round, but they're still going to do it. And that's why I've been noticing a lot more pictures. I'm getting more phone calls and texts about bears like being in trash
Right,
cans
yeah.
and things like that. Because it's this time of year.
Tis the season.
Yep.
So on that note, let's talk about what we can do when we encounter bears. For the subdivisions that are slam full of them, to anybody in your deer lease, or bears messing with your feeders and all that. Let's talk about, we'll call them civilian interactions with bears. What's best advice you can give us? Tracy, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, just as a reminder, bears are protected, state protected. It's illegal to harm them, harass them in any way. Of course, we're not talking about situations where your life may be threatened. We're not placing animal safety above humans by any means. I'm talking about just everyday interactions you could possibly have with a bear. Just a reminder that they are state protected. They are not federally listed in Alabama, but we do have that state nexus of no hunting season just because the population numbers aren't there to sustain any kind of harvest or hunting season. So with bears, they're going to be highly food motivated, anything to get the food the easiest way. So if you don't want to have that bear interaction, you need to be very meticulous with leaving food out, whether it be in your garbage can, not cleaning your grill, bird seed hanging in your yard, a gummy bear left under the toddler's car seat. Don't discount that because they'll find it and they'll rip your car apart in the process. So you remove that food source, you're going to remove any conflicts that you might encounter. Otherwise, just enjoy the fact that you've seen the state mammal and you have that animal still here and it wasn't totally wiped out after it was so abundant at one time in the 1800s.
I don't think most people around here are aggravated by them. They're probably tired of picking up trash after them, but I think for the most part, people have a healthy respect of what they're seeing when they see them. I think they know, like Will was talking about earlier, we don't remember seeing them when we were growing up. They weren't always in sight anyway. So it's cool to see them, whether that's good or bad that they're in the neighborhoods or in people's trash is another thing, but I think for the most part, people aren't aggravated by them. But like Trace said, if you want to remove that interaction, just take steps to remove the food.
Remove the food and just, I think it's important just to accept and acknowledge where you're living in the living situation and any wildlife you might encounter. And just for this part of the state, it's likely to be a bear.
Yeah.
And with development, them losing their habitat, population increasing, therefore housing increases, your encounters with black bears are going to be more often than they've ever been before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And think of it this way: if one's tearing your trash cans up, that bear may not be here in 50 years, right? Not necessarily that bear, or even that bear's offsprings with the way it's heading. You know,
Yeah.
it may whether they get pushed off to a different region or this little population don't even exist anymore. So you got something special here in Mobile County with those bears. So we should appreciate it while it's here. That's one thing I've been thinking about since we got into this and started caring about our bears. Is I want my kids to grow up knowing the Saraland black bears. You know, Saraland has made this new athletic.
Oh, they have the sports complex.
Sports complex. Thank you. Yeah, and they they put the bear on their emblem for the sports complex. So it's called the Land. So the city of Saraland recognizes the what they got going on, but although they took up several hundred acres of potential habitat, but that's. That's another song.
I think one of the cool things is especially for the Mobile County bears, they're a remnant population. They've always been here, but a lot of people don't realize that unless they've been out in the woods, and now you're just seeing them a lot more often because of development and potentially population growth, potentially just them being pushed around and moved, and also finding the easiest food source. So another thing I wanted to add on with the trash cans in particular, you can get bear-proof trash cans as a potential avenue to limit that, and also just unfortunately keeping trash inside and you're locked in your garage and then waiting until the morning of trash pickup to put it out. That can limit that. Just trying to think of some other ways to. You just want to remove the food source.
Yeah, you mentioned cleaning the grill earlier.
Yeah.
I knew that from a lesson that my great uncle learned. He had a cabin out in Colorado. Off the grid up there, and they had a lot of black bear and everything. And when he first moved out there, he wasn't very, I guess, bear wise of what was going on. And so he had grilled something for him and one of our cousins that was visiting, and didn't clean the grill. And he awoke to a crash on the back deck, and the grill was knocked over. It was clean, just as clean as it could be, just lit clean. And there was claw marks going up to where it was.
Yep.
And so he figured out what that was. So he learned from that experience and just clean the grill next time and put the scraps way away.
It always comes down to food with bears, it seems like, with black bears. But you said a very important word, being bear-wise. That's actually a website that folks can go visit, bearwise.org. They represent bear education and outreach for all of the southeastern state agencies, and they are a great source if you have any questions about living with bears or bear proofing, any bear questions at all. They can go to bearwise.org. It's a very helpful resource that they can tap into. And of course, we have biologists on staff as well that can assist with that if you need any assistance with trying to live with bears or bear proofing your home. We understand that the garbage can situation, I could be annoyed with picking up garbage every day too. If it got knocked over. So we're exploring some options, some methods that other state agencies are using for their garbage can. It's a strap method. It just bolts on the garbage can and keeps it strapped down, the lid closed. You can't open it. It's pretty simple and very cheap. So we're looking into that at the moment to try to present that as another helpful resources for landowners and living with bears, because we want folks to enjoy the wildlife that we have in Alabama. We're a treasure when it comes to aquatic and terrestrial wildlife that compared with the Amazon. So we should really, really look at that as just a piece of our heritage.
Yep, sure. Traci, what's the website we talk about reporting bear activity? That's through the state Is it Outdoor Alabama?
OutdoorAlabama.com. There is a black bear observation page that you can go to if you have seen a bear, if you've seen a bear print, if you've seen bear hair and you know that's what it is for a fact. We would love for you to report that to our website. The amount of information that a landowner gives is up to them in the reporting system. It can be reported at the county level. So we appreciate that information. It helps us know where bears are moving, especially during the summer when males are roaming at the peak of moving around, and where you can see a bear is during the summer. So it helps us with our research as well, watching bears and where they're moving across the state and where populations might be growing.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily put a crosshair for a research base camp or anything on your property. It just more so gives y'all an overall idea of what's happening.
Exactly.
No, yeah, that's exactly it. Like everywhere I trap, I get permission from the landowner. So I've had, luckily had great people down here that have been like giving me permission to come out and trap like year after year. And luckily been able to like get new contacts through that. So it's been absolutely amazing. But yeah, no, it's all, I work on their schedule basically. I'm like, thank you so much for letting me come out, letting me stay for as long as I need. But like if they need me to move out, like I'll move out for them.
Yeah.
Yes, down here our work wouldn't be possible without the private landowners. It's all been on
Yeah, it's all private landowners.
land.
Yeah, our last population estimate was in 2015, and I believe we estimated between 80 and 25 bears for down in the southeast, and that's the most up-to-date estimate that we have. Like I can tell you personally that I have touched 76 bears. Granted, half of that number is cubs, and a good large chunk of that number of cubs has not survived.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I can tell you.
Yeah. So
Definitively.
in 2015, we had, you said, between 80 and 125.
25.
All right. And then earlier you told us that you had a study of 30 cubs and 24 of them had died. So
2019 to 2023, we had 35 cubs, and 24 of those 35 have died. I haven't and then personally, I started in 2022, so some of those numbers are from before my time as well.
Okay. So I was just trying to bring out that there's not a huge expansion between 2015 and now of population.
It's not growing.
No.
Right.
That's another big threat to this population because our cubs aren't surviving. There's no new recruitment into the populations. The same animals are breeding and getting bred back to back. And Jenna, it's scary for this population. It's a huge threat. I'm no genetic nerds. It kind of makes me cringe when we talk about genetics, but it is a big part of the story down here. And some of the issues that we have, and I think it's causing this population to just be hanging on, and anything could just easily take it out. And then it's funny, but it's not funny because Jenna and I talk about the family tree down here with with bears, and there's just
Not a
a
lot
few
of
twigs
limbs.
hanging off of it. That's
It's a shrub, not a tree, like a wreath. Who knows?
Yeah. And logical, easy answer says, well, why don't you just bring in some genetics? Okay, we have a lot more questions to answer before that conversation, but from what we've seen, just an example of what's been labeled as a nuisance bear in other states, when those bears get moved, they don't fare well at all. They usually perish. They're trying to get back to where they come from, and they never really just settle or establish a new home range. They don't accept that transition. So just moving bears around, unfortunately, it's not as simple as that.
What Traci and Jenna want to say without saying it is that our population is not growing. There's just more people in Saraland than there used to be. And so you're interacting with bears more because there's more people and less places for them to hide. So
You think about social media too. I mean, something gets posted and everybody sees it. If it was
And seeing this-
2005,
possibly
a
seeing
few
this,
people find
the
out.
same animal multiple times as well is another thing that they think they're seeing a lot of bears when it's maybe just 2 or 3 different bears that you're constantly seeing day after day. I understand that perception, and I think as a homeowner, I would think the exact same thing if I wasn't involved with black bear research. I think, my gosh, there's bears everywhere. We're loaded with bears, no problems at all. And so I know people want to throw stones at me down here when I say maybe 150 individuals we identified down here. They don't believe it, and I can clearly understand why, but that doesn't take away the immediate and possibly detrimental threats that this population faces down here, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a big reason for why we're doing this study and why I'm looking at cub survival is trying to figure out why our cubs aren't surviving and being recruited into the population. We're trying to understand that because, we have lots of questions about what's going on down here.
Yep. So for people wondering down here, if you'll ever get to hunt them, don't hold your breath, and you'll have better luck maybe in the Northeast, maybe Mentone or maybe one day in our lifetime. But not happening down here. And the best thing we could do for them, if you're a landowner, from my land management background, we need to do some habitat work. It's about probably the biggest thing we could do for them. And also, I want to pitch the Forever Wild. They have a nomination tab on their webpage where you can go and nominate properties that are for sale, that are at least willing to be sold, right? That Forever Wild will entertain your nomination, or at least they say they will. So that is an opportunity for some habitat to be procured by the state if they find it meets all the right criteria in that anyway. So there's still a lot of room for the bears.
Yeah, I think just being bear aware and knowing how to live with bears is a huge obstacle to overcome, and getting used to a new way of life for a lot of folks that have not been exposed to bears before. Living with bears, removing that food source so they don't become habituated, because they will quickly overfood. And we always say a fed bear is a dead bear. And that's just an unfortunate situation, as well as road mortality is a huge contribution to black bears dying. So if you're driving around the area and no bears are there, just slow down and watch out. So if we can put all of those elements together, hopefully it can be a win for bears and other wildlife in general. We never manage for just one species. That's just not the way wildlife works. So when you manage for one species, it's going to benefit many species, from deer to bird and gopher tortoises, whatever else number of animals that you may have in the area.
Let's say we have maybe a landowner in Mobile County that's interested. They have bear on their property and maybe is interested in letting you guys come do some research on it. Who do they need to contact?
They can contact our district office that is in Spanish Fort, and they can speak with a biologist in that office if they feel like they have an opportunity for Jenna doing any black bear trapping in Mobile County. They can put anyone in contact with her. If anyone has any questions about living with bears after checking out Bear Wise, they can contact a biologist through our district office. Again, for this area, it's going to be the Spanish Fort office, and they can ask for recommendations on living with bears and how to get along with bears and answer any other bear questions they might have.
Okay. Yeah, we appreciate that, and we appreciate you guys coming to talk to us. And
Man, y'all have been awesome over the past couple of weeks. From Jenna, you inviting us to get to go with you, that was a cool thing. Like I told you, my kids think I'm a whole lot cooler for getting to do that, and that's something I'll remember for a long time. Maybe I get to see that number 50 tag again one day if she hadn't ate it off already or something. But And Traci, for your help and persistence, thank you very much. It's been a cool thing.
Absolutely.
I think we did a good job covering everything too. So I appreciate y'all.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
we
thank
love
you.
to talk about bears and happy to do so anytime.
So this is our devotional for tonight. I'm going to be talking about something that the Lord's kind of laid on my heart lately, about the gospel. There are a lot of unbelievers out there that may have heard about Jesus or Christianity or the church, but they don't truly understand what it means and what Jesus has done for us. And kind of, the mainstream version of Christianity out there can be dangerous at times, can really harden hearts. I know there's a lot of TV preachers and everything where it's, you give your life to Christ and your whole life's going to get better and you're not going to be broke anymore. And if you got cancer, it's going to be healed. And, it's not that he can't do those things, but that it's not it's not a genie thing. It's not something where you get 3 wishes if you give your life to Christ. That's not how it works. But a lot of people are kind of tricked into that, and then they harden their heart against Christianity because of those experiences that they have through that. So tonight, I just want to kind of lay out, what is the gospel? So in the beginning, God created man, and he placed him in the garden. And he held him to a standard of obedience. He placed the tree there, tree of knowledge, and told him not to eat of it. And so he did. And God had warned him that if he ate from the tree, he would die. And so he did eat, and that's when sin was brought into the world. That's why we have sickness and death. And, the old question of, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, when sin was brought in right there, it brought all that with it. And so because of that, everyone born from this man would be born into sin. And, because of that sin nature, like I said, that's why the world is broken as it is. And we all stand guilty in front of a holy God, a perfect and holy God. We stand guilty in front of him. We've all been, rebellious to the things that he set forth for us to follow. And we all crave, justice, and in all situations we all want justice for whatever's going on. But if he really gave us justice, we would all die for what we've done. But in spite of that, in his goodness and mercy, he sent his son, born of a virgin. And the reason that's important is because otherwise he would have been born into sin just like we are. And he lived a perfect life and obeyed God's law on our behalf. And all the punishment and everything that we deserved that would have been just for us to receive, he laid onto his son. And Jesus took that sin and that punishment onto him on our behalf. And so then Christ dies on the cross, and 3 days later he arose. And when this happens, Christ's righteousness is transferred to us so that all that put their faith in Jesus are saved from spiritual death. They're adopted into the family and sanctified. And we continue this sanctification throughout life until we die here on earth. And sanctification is not always a happy thing or a fun thing to go through. Sanctification is, at times, it's very difficult. Most of the time, it's very difficult. The challenges that we go through in life, a lot of times is part of our sanctification, and it can be difficult to continue to, trust in God and trust in the plans that he has for us when, really bad things are happening around us. A lot of times we want to either blame God or say, what have we done wrong or whatever. But these tough times and tribulations that we go through are just part of our sanctification here on earth. And sanctification is important because it brings glory to God when you go through these trials and tribulations and you just stay steadfast in him and people can see that you have a love for him, even though you've been through this horrible thing, it makes a difference. It brings glory to him. People see that, and people are saved by that actually every day. So after that, we're one day glorified and saved from the very presence of sin. So that's when we enter into heaven. We are saved from the presence of sin, which sounds really nice. No temptation or anything. It's just peace and spending time with the Lord. I think that's what that's the goal we all want to get there. But I think like our pastor said this morning in his sermon, it's not a thing of when you get saved, it just, zip you up to heaven. That's not how it works. We have work to do here on earth after we're saved. Otherwise, like I said, he'd take us as soon as we gave our life to Christ. So that's kind of the overview of what the gospel is there. It's more than just something that we need initially in order to put our trust in Jesus. The gospel is a constant reminder to every Christian that I'm broken and I deserve the wrath of God, yet each day his mercy and grace abounds. Each day is a gift I don't deserve, and I'm going to use it for his glory because he is good, merciful, powerful, and loving to a wretch like me. And in my opinion, the gospel is something that should be shared in every single message out of a pulpit. It should all revolve around the gospel. Our pastor, Brother Dennis, does a phenomenal job at this. Every time he preaches, it is gospel-centered, and the gospel's brought up. It's not here's 3 ways to help you be more faithful. That's not really a gospel sermon. That's kind of a worked sermon in my opinion. But I think the gospel should be presented every single message that a pastor puts out, because it is important to not just new Christians, but me and you and whoever else, whether you've been saved 1 year or 90 years, we all need to be reminded of our brokenness and reminded of what Jesus has done for us through the cross.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know what the gospel is, especially in a day and age as this, where among other people or among other things you could listen to, 300 people can listen to me and you sit down and talk. So there's information overload, and this prosperity gospel is widespread. And if people don't know the truth, if they're based in their version of the gospel is off of what they hear from celebrity preacher or even celebrity himself. I think about like Russell Brand, who Russell Brand is, he's a recent quote convert,
right?
And bless his heart, I think he's on the right track, but maybe not getting his information from the right place necessarily.
Right.
But, there's all kind of gospels out there. But the one true one is what Will just shared with us, and that is that we are saved by the works of Jesus Christ, and that God loved us so much that he sent the most precious thing he had, sent him from paradise down here to earth to die for us. And we can't do anything else to gain our salvation. And once we've received it, we can't do anything else to lose it. That's important to know. It's not you have to give X amount of money. You have to have X amount of spirit within you. You have to speak a special language or anything like that. The gospel starts, contains, and ends with the work of Jesus Christ. And I think that was good. I think it's a good thing to talk about. And with that, it's I was reminded while Will was talking, to piggyback on what we did on our last episode, talking about stewardship. I think the stewardship of, our responsibility to be stewards of the gospel. Whereas in the first part of Will's devotion, we may be talking to unbelievers. If you never heard the gospel, you just did. But to us believers, we've been entrusted with a responsibility to share this gospel. Will says that the gospel should be preached from every pulpit on every Sunday morning in every church. Absolute truth. If your preacher's not preaching the gospel, then he's kind of missing the point. It's not just left to him. It's left up to us too. We've been given that gospel, and we've been charged with going and telling it and spreading the gospel. So we can, to piggyback on the whole stewardship theme, yeah, we have to be good stewards of the gospel as well. We got to share it. Can't hold it in. Can't bury it like that third slave did.
It's tough sometimes. You want to share the gospel with someone, and I know it would be difficult to, in certain times to go through everything that I just talked about. And so sometimes you need kind of an elevator pitch. And I would like to read real quick Galatians 4, 1 through 7. To me, if you need an elevator pitch, if you're in that situation, you're like, I don't really know, exactly what to say here as far as what is the gospel. It's it's kind of complex. Just read Galatians 4, 1 through 7 to him. I'll read it here. It only takes a second here. I mean that the heir, as long as he is a child, is no different from a slave, though he is the owner of everything, but he is under guardians and managers until the date set by his father. In the same way we also, when we were children, were enslaved to the elementary principles of the world. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons. And because you are sons, God has sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but a son, and if a son, then an heir through God. And that kind of sums it all up right there. In the fullness of time, God sent his Son. That's the summation of the gospel right there in 7 verses in Galatians that Paul lays out there. And so if you ever get in that situation, just remember Galatians 4, 1 through 7.
Yeah, thanks, Will. That was good. Appreciate that. All right, guys, that's going to do it for episode 2. We've enjoyed it and hope you have. We appreciate you listening and hope you'll stay tuned for the next one. Thank y'all.